Tonight on RB's Toy Box, it's story time with Grandpa and Bo. Tonight for story time, we're going to read the Snow White and Seven Dwarfs story. Once upon a time, there lived a sweet princess named Snow White. She was so beautiful that her evil stepmother, the queen, was very jealous. The queen was cruel to Snow White. She forced Snow White to wear rags and do chores all day long. Yet Snow White sang while she worked and kept her heart cheerful. She knew her true love would come for her one day. Each morning the queen looked into her magic mirror and asked, "Magic mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" The mirror always answered, "You are." But one day the mirror said, "Snow White is now fairer than you." The queen was very jealous, so she decided to get rid of Snow White. She called for her huntsman to help her. The huntsman did as the queen commanded and took Snow White into the woods. She was happily gathering flowers when the huntsman spoke. "The queen wishes you gone," he said. "You must hide from her." Snow White was very frightened and fled into the dark forest. When it became night, she fell asleep on the ground. At dawn, the forest creatures found her. When a rabbit sniffed at her hand, she woke up. "I have no place to stay," Snow White told the animals and the birds. And the birds flew around her, and she followed them until they led her to a little cottage next to a stream. "It's just like a little dollhouse," cried Snow White. She knocked on the door, and when no one answered, she opened the door and stepped inside. Inside the cottage was a kitchen, a fireplace, a table, and even 7 little chairs. They were all dirty, and a sink was full of dirty dishes. "It looks like children live here," she said. "I can look after them." Snow White and her animal friends started putting things in order. Snow White swept the floor and the rabbit helped. The chipmunks washed the dishes and the birds brought flowers for the table. When all was tidy, Snow White went upstairs. She found a bedroom with the 7 little beds and a name carved on each one: Doc, Happy, Sneezy, Dopey, Grumpy, Bashful, and Sleepy. And Snow White fell asleep. The house belonged to the 7 dwarfs who worked in a diamond mine. And when they came home, they saw that a fire had been lit. At first they were very frightened, but then they found Snow White. She woke up and smiled at them. "Who are you?" asked Doc. "Why, I am Snow White," she said, "and I need a place to stay." "Stay with us," said the dwarfs. Then they all sat down and had a good dinner. Afterwards, they sang a song until it was time to go to bed. The queen found out about Snow White's hiding place. She disguised herself as an old peddler woman and dipped an apple into a magic potion. Secretly, she set off into the forest. In the morning, the dwarfs went to work and left Snow White alone. She was baking pies when she saw an old woman outside. She did not know that it was the queen. "Come in and rest," Snow White said. The queen gave Snow White the red apple. When Snow White bit into the apple, she fell onto the floor. Ooh. When the dwarfs came home, they found Snow White. Believing she was gone forever, they made a bed for her out of gold and glass and laid her upon it in the forest. The dwarfs and the birds and the animals kept watch. Snow White was still, but her heart was still beating. Meanwhile, the prince, who had searched for her far and wide for Snow White, heard about the beautiful maiden who slept in a gold and glass bed. He traveled far to get a glimpse of the sleeping princess and knew she was his true love. The prince gently kissed Snow White. Her eyes slowly opened. Love's first kiss had broken the queen's spell. The 7 dwarfs danced for joy for Snow White. Snow White's wishes had finally come true. That's it for tonight's story. Now you go to bed and get some rest, and look for your true love to come someday soon.